you think it's too late to actually have a go and change direction midlife or whatever, but it's only too late if you're on your deathbed.
Tell us about what you ended up doing almost by accident, and what your book is and the 5 main topics of the book, and then we'll go on from there, if that's okay.
Sure. I was looking for work that didn't involve high heels and uniforms and corporate uniforms. So I took a job as a carer and a living carer, and that patient actually ended up being terminally ill, and that opened the door to 8 years of looking after dying people. And it was certainly nothing I saw coming, other than I wanted a job with heart and no high heels. So that led into 8 years, and then I kept hearing these repeated themes come up over the years. And the first time I heard one or two about the regrets that were shared with me, I started paying attention, because I thought, I'm witnessing some pretty huge anguish and heartache here.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down the same road. And so I started paying more attention, and there turned out to be 5 main themes. And they came from different angles and in different wording sometimes, but they were still 5 main themes. Yeah.
And we've heard about the themes before, but you've heard them firsthand, so you can confirm that they're right. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, it's amazing. It's amazing. So do you recall the first time you heard one of these themes and it sort of struck you, and you thought, oh yeah, people do say this, but now I'm witnessing it for the first time, this sentiment?
I don't think I was aware of people saying it so much when I first heard it, and so it was quite an impact on me, because I realised, hang on a sec, I'm being given a big lesson here.
Yeah.
And it was a little tiny lady called Grace, and she'd stayed in a very unhappy marriage for decades, as that generation did. Her husband apparently was an ogre. That's what her adult kids described him as. And she wanted to go travelling. He didn't. And then he ended up in a nursing home. And so she went straight off to the travel agent and got the catalogue to go on a bus tour of Australia. And straight away after that, didn't get anywhere. She started becoming ill, and she was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Had never smoked. He smoked in the house. Yeah. And so it was in looking after her. I was doing 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. shifts 5 to 6 days a week. So one day when Grace was in tears and I was hugging her, and she just squeezed her little bony hand, squeezed my wrist, and she was in tears and said to me, "Whatever you do, Bronnie, promise this dying woman that you will always have the courage to live a life true to yourself, not the life that other people expect of you." And it just hit home. I was trying to change direction and go against my family's expectations and all sorts of things then. And just, I'd grown to love her, but also just witnessing the depth of that anguish, I just thought, oh, okay, I actually need to find the courage to do this for myself, because there's no way I'm going to end up experiencing this anguish and heartache myself. This is a lesson here.
Let's go to I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, it came from a couple of different angles. One was people wishing that they'd be able to tell their families that they loved them. There were a lot of families that didn't have those communication channels open, and it just was terrifying for some people to think that they would have to be that vulnerable to tell their families they loved them. But there were also patients who wished they'd stood up for themselves against their families or against whoever, and actually treated themselves kinder and expressed their feelings in that way.
Yeah.
I guess in these days we'd call it setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just a question of regretting not telling people that you love them. It's a question of not having loved yourself enough.
That's right, Chris.
And protected yourself enough.
Yeah.
Give us an example of that, a first-hand example of that.
Darling old man, 91, and his family wouldn't even admit that he was dying. And he actually had to ask me, am I dying? And I said, yes, Joseph, you are.
You're tearing up just talking about it. And you've written a book about it, and it still hits you so hard.
I lived it. Yeah, I lived it, and I cared for these people. And so I used to massage their hands and their feet and get lotion, and just I guess that broke down barriers as well. And his family just stayed in denial all the way through, and he knew, of course he knew he was dying, and they're bringing in huge meals every day, and he's down to half a strawberry or half a tub of yogurt, and they're saying, come on, eat up, you'll be well, you'll be well in no time. And so I said to him, he asked me, he said, I'm dying, aren't I? And I said, yes, Joseph, you are. I mean, I'm not going to lie to someone when it's so obvious, and that's a really lonely way to die. And I said to him, do you want to talk about it with the family? I'll be the medium sort of in between and break down those sort of barriers. And he was like, oh, no, it's too hard. It's gone too late now.
What a way to die.
Yeah, so lonely with family all around you, but so
surrounded
lonely.
but alone.
Yes.
Oh, jeez, that's just awful. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd let myself be happier. Again, these are sort of 5 sections to the book, but there's many stories within each sort of each part, each window. Which is the most recurring theme you think you come across?
That first one, wishing that I'd lived a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me.
Isn't it strange though, isn't it? Because when you're younger, you think, well, I'm never going to be that person. I'm never going to get caught up in a situation or a relationship or a job or whatever. Who would do that? How silly? Why would you do that? And surely there are enough people in the world who are sort of self-aware, to a vast percentage of those that aren't. But over time, you just become weary. You become anesthetized. Then you become numb. And then from delusion and denial, you create a new reality, which is the opposite of everything you ever wanted. And you can't get out of it anymore because you've isolated yourself from the inside out. And you've built up all these layers, and nobody can get in, which I suppose is the security aspect of it, but you can't get out anymore.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. And then you sort of take on all those responsibilities, and you think it's too late to actually have a go and change direction midlife or whatever, but it's only too late if you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think crisis helps that as a catalyst?
I think that life gives us a crisis if the yearning to change is big enough.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's...
So it could be either way around. It's a bit of both.
We either find the courage to make the changes more gently ourselves and do it as a step-by-step process, or life just says, I've been listening to that longing for decades now, I'm going to crack you open so that you actually have to stop and look at this. Yeah.